bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Some things in life are bad, they can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. This'll help things turn out for the best. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the right side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be silly chumps. Just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. So always look on the bright side of death. Just before you draw your terminal breath. Life's a counterfeit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's the joke, it's true. You see, it's all a show. Keep them laughing as you go. Just remember the last laugh is on you. Always look on the bright side of life. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side.
Hi, and welcome back to Ward 13. After that unsuccessful hiatus at Hopwood at Large, Priscilla is my guest today. And because of all the benzos I've been taking over 20 years, for some reason, your last name's escaping me, and so is your stage name.
My last name is Mills.
I knew that because I thought Wilbur Mills, but I have a good friend who's like an uncle to me, and he was part of Wilbur Mills' presidential campaign in 1972. So then you're thinking, it can't be Mills because it's Wilbur Mills. Hey, let's go. I like two shots, remember? But then we'll favor Priscilla because, hey, you go on calls, right? You go into auditions.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're supposed to come on, and that's when something drops onto the shirt that you just freshly laundered?
Yeah, you just got to roll with it.
Yeah,
I just hope they don't notice.
my problem is, like I was telling you about, one of my before the camera, one of my ex-girlfriends said some very nasty things to me, and I gained 10 kilos, which sounds a lot better than 22 pounds. And so now when it falls, there's no way to get to my lap.
But until you pointed it out, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, and we are on 480 rather than high definition. And here's the best thing you can do. Like when I look, see, we have the thing over there. We're not supposed to look. There's a guy named Chris Herbert. Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
Herbert's a very popular name here in Manchester. But he's Herbert with an R. And he always looks at that. So it looks like he's talking to an audience. But we're never supposed to do it. But see, you're supposed to look across. And then, oh boy, am I fat today. And then you start going down. Oh, but now I look like a midget. So
It would have been funny if you just kept pressing and just kept going and you're underneath the desk.
that's that. I had Peter and Joel on my show once, and I did. Excuse me. Oh, let's start again. Do they still have clappers?
Oh, well, we
When
should
they
have them
shoot
here
now.
where it's with the fake audience thing that you mean like that?
Oh, I have that. In fact, yeah, I use that sometimes. But when they shoot now, everything's video. There's no film. We have the film you made, Homecoming.
Okay.
And I think we can go online and get something else. But, hey, tell the audience who you are while I recover from the drinking a cup of coffee on the way here. And
I thought you were
trying to park simultaneously.
I thought you were going to drink something more interesting, but
Just coffee.
So I've been doing acting now since January. I got back into it. Kind of just went back to pursuing my passion. I was doing working in healthcare. I don't know. I just went back. I just started doing community theater.
Okay. Now, one thing, Priscilla, you can't do this.
Oh, is it too loud?
Yeah. Brendan.
I know, it's one of my...
Brendan might have sailed away or something.
I even do that, like, if you see me, like, on the Peter White show, I'll be like this, so he's kind of fiddling
That's
around.
okay. Here, these are...
These really pick it up.
Yeah, and everybody inevitably, they want to...
Hopefully I'm not too loud, too, because I know one time when I was on the show, they were like, Priscilla is, like, blasting on the thing. And on the headset, it seemed like I sounded fine.
I have a very loud voice.
You're a very loud guy.
And I could hail, I was a sergeant in the Army, I could hail a 747 from 35,000 feet up, if I had to. And when you're in the Army with a bunch of guys, because that's what it was, although...
everybody screaming over each other, really.
Oh, jeez, I was a barrack sergeant, too.
Oh, so then you really got the deep...
I don't have a deep voice.
Well, you might have had it at that point.
Well, see, I grew up with certain actors. See, I used to write about acting
And the
Hollywood.
IMDb, you said.
Oh, yeah. And like Marlon Brando, I've written about. Marlon Brando was always the gold standard from the time I'm a kid. But I'm sure he's still looked up to. But it was a different type of acting because of the technology, too. You like Robert De Niro, you told me. And De Niro's probably...
I like him more than Al Pacino. You know how people have that. Robert De Niro was my favorite. And I thought he was also a good-looking actor. Like when he was in Godfather 2, which was my favorite Godfather of the series. He was just so handsome. And especially on the screen, you just love how he was able to... Even though he ended up becoming a head boss of the mafia, like that's how it was supposed to start, but like you found like the reason why he did it and you didn't hate him for it, you know.
Well, you didn't hate you're not supposed to hate them. We could talk a whole show about The Godfather, because see, that came out when I was born late in the year 1959, so I'm going to be 60 soon, which never thought that could happen, but let's not get into that. In fact, I remember when Warren Beatty turned 60. There are all these actors you grew up with.
I remember Warren Beatty because I used to watch Nick at Night. I used to watch that as a kid. So he used to be on Dobie Gillis.
Now, see, when you say a handsome actor, I can tell that Paul Newman's handsome. I could tell Robert Redford was handsome. And years later, when I was old, because you grew up with certain actors. Brando was already... When I was up till 12 years old, Brando had been the big actor, and he was supposed to be our answer to Laurence Olivier, who was considered the great actor of his time. Because he was a great stage actor, too, but he would not go on stage. And I loved acting. I started reading about acting. And every book of a certain era, the late 50s to the 60s, up until the early 70s, was always talking about Brando. And sometimes they wouldn't name him, that he just didn't live up to his promise. He went to the movies. And he was a top 10 box office star in the 50s, right up to... But then he made great movie. Have you ever seen One-Eyed Jacks? Where he his only directorial effort. It's a really... They call it the method acting Western. And it's a great movie. I was just reading about it again. And then he made the remake of Mutiny on the Bounty, which was a famous flop. And every movie he made in the 60s flopped. And even though he was like the highest paid actor, they were still paying him up to about 1967. When Charlie Chaplin made his last movie called The Countess in Hong Kong with Sophia Loren, who was this great star. And they offered to Sean Connery, who was... at that time, Bond, the first Bond, he was the #1 box office star in the world. He turned it down, so they give it to Brando. And here's the thing. The great thing, Brando, well, you know, as an actor, movies are a director, is a director's art. A actor has to follow direction.
Exactly.
Well, Brando wasn't like that. And he always said, I direct myself. And John Huston, who directed him, in a great movie. Once again, he was filling in for Monty Clift, who's another great actor, but he's a terrible alcoholic. It's called Reflections in the Golden Eye, where he's going to play a homosexual army officer married to Elizabeth Taylor. Now, there was never a bigger star. You're young than Elizabeth Taylor. It's hard to believe.
Well, yeah, she did the Cleopatra, and plus, what was she married like 10 times?
7.
So we
Her
were
and
just
Rich-
talking about that because with J-Lo, because she's getting remarried now. So I was like, J-Lo's getting up there with Liz Taylor.
Yeah, Liz was a big box office star. Because women were box office stars.
Plus, she had the violet
50s,
eyes.
60s. Yeah, and then she married Richard Burton. That was a big scandal. So, they were married to other people. It's really different times. And you look at them now, and they look like these dumpy middle class people. These people were the big sex stars at their time, you know, but they were. And I remember reading about 10 or 15 years ago, they had gone through the equivalent of $350 million in 10 years.
Wow.
Because they made so much money, and then they spent it. One of their greatest hits was Virginia Woolf. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? You have to see that. Liz is great in that. But Montgomery Clift had been her friend, a close friend. She had been in love with him when she was like 17 years old. Great movie. What's it called? George Stevens. It's based on an American tragedy. Place in the Sun. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Stevens revolutionized the close-up. Because as an actor, if you can't handle a close-up,
Right.
that's it. But she was in love with him, but he was gay or very conflicted. Then he drank himself to
Trying
death.
to help him switch teams, do the Elaine Bennis.
I guess.
Like, is it possible to switch teams?
Yeah, so we can't go any further because this isn't Amsterdam.
Oh, well,
Remember when she finds out that she can't compete?
you're right. It's not the right equipment.
Right, and Monty ups and dies, and he's supposed to play. It's a Carson McCullers novel, and so they pick Brando, who's this like. I just found out he slept with Jackie Kennedy of all people, but he's a very macho type of guy, and he plays this closeted gay army major. And I remember seeing it when I was a kid on TV, saying, "This is brilliant," because in the old days. Nobody really talked about acting or stuff, movies and everything. You only had the 3 channels. Everything had commercials. It was all chopped up.
Well, so my mom's favorite actor is Tyrone Power. She used to love it. And she said he ended up coming out of the closet.
No, that's all made up.
Really?
Yeah, he had 5 kids and all sorts of... Once you're dead, you can't be libeled, so you can say anything about anybody.
That's true.
And he was a combat Marine. But who knows?
Right. But because he did the Jesse James.
Oh, yeah. He was very handsome. The 2 great films you have to see about him is Razor's Edge, 1946. They made a god-awful version with Bill Murray. And he's brilliant in that. And, his best role, he plays a psychic who becomes a circus geek. And this was at a time where, people didn't use the word geek. You know what a geek is?
Nerd.
Oh, no, a geek is the lowest person in a carnival. He bites the heads off of live chickens and stuff. They had a geek at a Vietnam vet back in 1977 at an infamous bachelor party. But we can't name any names because, even though it was a long time ago, being sued sucks.
I wanted to, because you mentioned
But he was handsome.
Robert Redford before, because you remember we were talking about favorite movie, A River Runs Through It.
Well, he became a very fine director.
I really liked that movie. That's another movie I could watch over and over again.
I was just watching part of The Sting. You must have seen that. That was a monster hit.
I might have.
He only got 1 Oscar nomination his entire career. And then he was brilliant in that movie where he's on that boat that's sinking and he has to stay alive and there's hardly any dialogue at all. I mean, he didn't get nominated. We can talk. The Academy Awards are very... I used to write about them.
Well, yeah, because that's very...
Yeah, there seems to be... Because Clint Eastwood did a great role, too, as an old man, and they ignored him. In the old days, they used to... like Spencer Tracy. they'd give him a nomination on his deathbed, which they literally
It
did.
is kind of like a favoritism thing, because it's,
Yeah.
amongst your peers that are voting, right? So,
Well, we're going to have to thread our way back to Brando and Godfather. This is what it's like with me. But we're talking about the Academy Awards. I have a friend who was living with the man, I'm not going to name, well, he's Michael Blake. He won an Oscar for writing Dances with Wolves. And I was talking to somebody about what it's like to be an actor, or even a writer to a degree, but more an actor. You have to be willing to give up everything to be an actor, because it takes everything. And in his early 40s, Michael Blake was washing dishes at like a crappy restaurant in Arizona, as the way I know the story. And then Kevin Costner, who he had known before, took him and Joss and put them in his garage, the apartment of the garage. And he wrote Dances with Wolves first as a novel, as a way to sell it. Then it won. Then the movie gets made, which there's so many screenplays and everything that are optioned, but they don't get made. Then he gets banned from the set because he was meticulous about everything. It was the first, I guess, movie where they really used the dialogue. They talked in Sioux and all that. And then it's a big hit. They thought it was going to be a flop. It's a big hit, and Costner directed it. And then they had at the old Pantages Theater, which was where they had the Oscars in the early days. This big place, because everybody wants to go to the Oscars, and when they used to have it in Santa Monica, there weren't enough seats. So Jocelyn has to go up in the balcony because he has a Sioux woman who's going to translate his speech, which we can talk about. Brando sent an Indian woman or Native American to refuse his Oscar for The Godfather. But then he gets a $2 million for his next screenplay. So can you tell what's going to happen next? He asked Jocelyn to marry her. I shouldn't be telling her name. Maybe we'll have to blank it out when it goes archive. She doesn't. He marries Viggo Mortensen's cousin, who's a Danish model. At the time, Viggo Mortensen was just like a street performer or something, and he was really nobody, going to poetry readings. Then the screenplay never gets made, and he winds up, a poor guy back where he started.
Really?
She leaves him. Yeah.
That's depressing.
And then he passed away from some like ungodly thing. But he dedicated his life to doing that, and he succeeded for that moment. And but he literally like gave up everything. But see, I lived in L.A., New York City, particularly L.A. Every server is an actor,
Right.
and the cooks are probably
Or a model.
They're usually actors, because an actor and a model sometimes are similar. But then you'll have the writers or the bus boys or the cooks or something. But writing, you can do other things.
Right.
Acting. So what? We'll go back to Brando in a bit, because I have a thing. What brought? Why do you love acting?
I think for me, it's I could portray somebody else. It's kind of fun to do.
To be somebody else?
Yeah.
You're not running away from anything, are you?
No. Should I be?
I don't know.
No, it's kind of a unique situation to put yourself in someone's shoes, or even just a made-up character, because not everybody is nonfiction. There's a lot of fictional characters there, but then you kind of put your spin on it based on the writing. And it's kind of funny, too, because how you were saying, it mostly comes down to the director. Their vision for it. Now, it depends on how much leeway they give you. Some people are like, I want you to put your spin on it of what you think. It just depends. But a lot of times, like if I'll read a script, I'll see the character one way. And it's totally off from what the director wants. I always notice that when I come to do something. But I take direction well, so luckily. So then I'm just off and do something else.
See, John Huston always said he never directed the actors because he cast them. But if you watch a John Huston film, they're always like established actors. And he was a screenwriter, and his father was a great actor, Walter Huston, who's also a great Broadway actor. And so his first film is the remake of The Maltese Falcon with Bogart. And that made Bogart a great star, but it also made his career too. But there's two types of directors. When we talk about Coppola, let's go back to
My uncle worked with him.
Okay. Houston said the only actor of genius was Brando that he ever met. And he said it was like opening up a furnace door, which when we were young, there were coal furnaces. We still had them at my house. You open it up and you just see all this light pouring out. But that
Could have been a contender.
Yeah, that was the only genius he'd ever seen. But you see, who made him, his great mentor was Elia Kazan, who was a completely different type of director. He micromanaged the performance. But he had been an actor himself with the group theater. And so he would collaborate with people, but he'd play awful tricks with the actors. Like, of course, Streetcar Named Desire. That made Brando famous. What was he? He's born in 23 years old. All of a sudden, he's a toast of Broadway. Burton always said the problem with Brando and Elizabeth Taylor is they became famous so early in their lives that it kind of screwed them up.
Nowadays, look how... it's totally different dynamic. People are so young now and they're multimillionaires and...
Yeah, fame was different then until...
because that's pretty much what you had was just, like, we didn't have, the connections with the internet and being able to, do stuff with Instagram and sharing and views and all this other stuff. So, like, you'd go out and just go to the movies. Like, that was,
Oh, yeah, something special. And there was always this big break between TV and the movies. And TV stars seldom passed over into stardom until maybe maybe early 90s, late 80s. The only one, Steve McQueen, but he wasn't a big TV star. James Garner, but he never became a big star. Usually it was like, the great mythologist Joseph Campbell said the difference was, when you go to a movie house, you'd see these actors on the huge screen, and they were bigger than life, where... the biggest screen we had was like a 21-inch when I was a kid. And that was, oh, boy, a 21-inch. If you gave somebody a 21-inch TV, they'd probably break it and go out for $150 and get a 40-inch. But, you know what? You'll never see Jack Nicholson give a interview. Do you know why?
Now that
He's never been on TV giving interviews. Because he said that would ruin his mystique. But
everybody's got their thing, I guess.
Yeah. But now we're going back to Brando, because we get to the Godfather. Yeah. They were bravura actors, They really ate the scenery. Shouters. I was thinking of somebody that's like Kirk Douglas, who still outlived everybody of his generation. He's 102 now. But he hasn't made a movie in years.
He's like that old.
Yeah, but he was a big star, and... he was always in movies with Burt Lancaster, who was a little bigger of a star, but they were together. But he had such a hot personality, like that. And Paul Newman used to say, see, Brando came, and every actor after that, I don't know what it's like now, because I stopped writing about movies about 10 years ago. They always say, well, this is the new Brando. They said that about James Dean. And then it became, after he died, this is the new Brando. And you can see how he copies Brando to a degree. Warren Beatty, here's the new James Dean or the new Brando. But you see, the person that was closest to him and suffered was Paul Newman. They look something alike because of their profile. But one is a very hot actor, and the other cool. See, I grew up, Paul Newman was a great star. And... yeah, he was unique. But he once had a famous interview where they always used to ask him early on, before he became a #1 box office star in the 60s, Butch Cassidy and all that. Huge, huge star. And you know what you always want to ask me, he said? You want to ask me about Brando and what's the difference between me and him. He says, when you're watching a Brando performance, you're waiting for him to explode. But with Paul, it was different. But... when they made The Godfather, Coppola wanted Brando. That story's been talked about. But he goes on the Mike Douglas show, which is a talk show of its time, and they asked, why did you want to play a mafia chief then? And he says, well, I hadn't had a job in 2 years.
Hey, at
he
least
had become
there's
unbankable, and that they didn't even want to cast him. But all the young actors just looked up to him and revered him, and just not in America, but in England, because Julie Christie was one of my favorite stars.
And he's Greek, right?
Who?
Brando?
No, Brando's Irish.
No, you know who I'm thinking of? Who's no, I don't know who I'm thinking of. I know there was somebody that would also play like Italian roles, but he was Greek.
Oh, geez, Greeks always got to play in the old days. Indians and Italians and them used to play all sorts.
Yeah, like
of ethnic
Brando,
groups.
like because that wasn't even his like real last name, right?
No, that is his last.
Oh, it
name.
is his real last name.
Yeah,
okay. But he's not Italian though.
No, Brando. He was criticized because there's a famous thing that he played. There was a huge backlash against they used to call it the Italo-American community, because they thought that was stereotyping. Because all sorts of gangsters were always Italian, and they were really mad about it. And he was notorious for being a great civil rights person. And he said, "Well, it'd be very hard to play the Godfather as a quarter Irish and an eighth Chinese and everything."
Well, that was the same thing with Robert De Niro. He's more Irish, right?
It's funny. You see, I was in New York, and I usually was around writers and people in the arts community, theater and that. And in L.A., they call Jack Nicholson the Irishman, which he really does. You know, he looks Irish, and I guess his mother is Irish. Nobody knows who his father was. But when you realize that...
And he's from New Jersey.
Yeah. It's not a compliment. It means he drinks, he drugs, he cheats on his girlfriends, and he gambles all the time. Because outside of Boston, which is kind of like an Irishman says, "Oh, that's Dublin West." Other places like New York, Irishmen were always cops and stuff, so there was a lot of resentment against them. And when I was in New York, people would call De Niro Irishman. I'm thinking, why would they call him an Irishman? But he is. His father was Irish and Sicilian or Italian, and his mother was a Yankee. Mm-hmm. But see, I think he's really ugly looking. He was a shock.
Really? I thought like when he played in The Godfather, I thought he was good looking.
So
I have off tape. I also think Charles Manson's good looking. So.
Oh, you come back. We'll do a whole show on Charles Manson. He used to make me all sorts of money as a writer.
Right.
That was really the crime of the century. I haven't seen the new movie by Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, I haven't seen it either. No.
So.
Someone told me it was really good.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Brando was like this father figure to all these young actors. You can go on and see all that stuff they have on YouTube. James Caan was Jewish, but it's funny. Everybody thinks he's Italian, and in the Sopranos, somebody says, he's not Italian. James Caan. What do you mean he's not Italian? He's the son of a kosher butcher, but being acting, you can be anything, right?
Well, so there was one point I wanted to make. So Gene Wilder.
I love Gene Wilder.
He was on the Actors Studio. He was getting interviewed. And one of the things when you see with acting, when he was in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, he came out, and you remember he kind of was like stumbling through, and then he did that somersault.
I saw it when I was 10 years old at a drive-in, so it could be
What was great is that he said that wasn't even in the script. He just did it. And it wasn't the fact that he did it, but when they explain, well, why did you do it? And he's like, well, at the time, he goes, the kids don't know whether to trust him or not throughout the whole movie. Because at the beginning, they think he's like this, and then he's somewhere else, and it just kind of set the tone for the whole thing. So just the fact of like not even so much of doing it, but why you're doing it. So I thought that was pretty genius on his end.
Oh, he was a wonderful comedian.
Did you ever see Haunted Honeymoon with Gilda Radner?
Who's his wife?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so funny. He was just great.
To me, the original producers, I watch that every year.
Oh my! I was talking about that the other day.
He was brilliant in that, and Zero Mostel was like a...
They were just perfect.
Yeah, Zero was a force of nature. He used to always be on TV singing. He was the original Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, but they didn't cast him in the movie. So, but he'd always be on TV singing "If I Were a Rich Man." But yeah, that was Mel Brooks. Yeah, and
I always like Mel Brooks, or I grew up a lot with the Marx Brothers.
Man,
my favorite one.
You're gonna have to come back. We got to do a whole show on the Marx Brothers.
And we do lines from it all the time, like my family.
It's not Chico, is it? Or Chico, sometimes they call him.
Yeah. Well,
The one who was supposedly Italian.
Well,
Viaduct?
what was the one? Room Service is my favorite one.
Oh, that's a later one. My mother
Where
and I.
Lucille Ball is in it, and
My mother and I are big Marx Brothers fans, but a lot of people aren't. And we
I
actually
I
thought
love
that was
humor.
hilarious.
Yes.
But I watch all of them. That's not considered one of the great ones. That's the one where he goes after the turkey that's flying.
Yes. Be like Shakespeare didn't know $500.
It's all,
Everything about the backer.
Yeah, they're always playing with language because it's the immigrants. Because Chico's playing. There used to be acts. They used to be called a Dutch act, which was a German and a Jew, and they do dialect. Except the Jew would always play the German, the actor, and it didn't matter who played the German. And there was also a Mike and Ike act, which was a Jew and an Irishman, because it came out of like the Lower East Side where the two groups are clashing into each other, and then inevitably, like somebody's sister, the Irish Catholic, marries the Jewish kid, and this was a huge thing. But in comedy, actually, Jewish humor really became American humor, particularly with the sound film and people like the Marx Brothers. All the interplay with language, because an immigrant's coming here and clashing with the language, and how to use it.
And just their comedic timing,
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of humor, like, when you see things and they're always moving or scheming or doing stuff like that, so.
Oh, sometimes I always have, hello, I must be going. That's from, what's one? Where is that when he's Professor Quackenbush? Because I love Groucho.
Yeah. I already had a really bad mouth, and because my mom used to have all the autobiographies from a lot of the actors. I think she still has all those books, too.
Oh, there's a famous story where...
he had gonorrhea and all this stuff. He was always sleeping around. And
Oh, well, that was before penicillin, too. But they had sulfa drugs. But let's not go down that one.
Why not? Well, isn't
Brando is notorious.
Harpo? Oprah took the name Harpo backwards, right? Isn't that the story?
I don't know.
Yeah,
but that
I
would
think
make
she
sense.
was. She was
because it's called Harpo Productions.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was something.
He was very. They all played instruments.
He was an intellectual and good friend of. Oh my God, who's the Last Tycoon? Married. Which Robert De Niro was in The Last Tycoon. It was a Elia Kazan, but it was not a very good movie. With a screenplay by Harold Pinter. That was probably the problem. Nobel Prize winner. Usually, what was it Hitchcock said? The best movies, you take a junk or a mediocre thing, and then you just turn it in. He's a great director. Then you just turn it into something great. But if they give you a classic, what are you going to do?
Right.
You can't really, if you manipulate it, everybody's pissed off at you. But we're finally getting back. Well, Brando was the godfather for those actors, and but geez, like Al Pacino became such an over-actor. Like when you see that movie he made, And Justice for All, talk about chewing scenery. But around the late 90s, they developed a microphone that went on, a body mic, that was so sensitive. A new generation of actors who are now like in their 50 years old, they all just spoke very softly. So you'd have an older actor who's there like shouting because you had the boom mics and stuff like this. And also other mics that were less sensitive. And it changed acting where people start downplaying stuff. But because it's like Newman said, you waited for Brando to have an explosion. And yeah. So Brando, that movie put him back on top. Then he made Last Tango in Paris, which was this big cause célèbre, because no actor had ever taken his clothes off and talked filthy before, and that was a big hit. And then he just basically retired again, He'd already been on top, been on the seesaw. Then he made so much money. But when you watch Les Tango, which that was written in Italian for two French actors, a great French actor called Jean-Louis Trintignant, and Dominique Sanda was this hot actress of the time. But he was a Catholic, and he said, "I'm not going to be in this, pornographic movie." And she was pregnant, so they kept Brando. The Godfather hadn't hit yet, and he'd only been paid $50,000 for that, which usually is because he hadn't acted.
Well, isn't it back then though that was considered
No.
a lot, or no?
No, he was paid $750. I used to write about movies. The top salary was like $750,000, which
okay.
somebody like Paul Newman, who's having all these successes, has. Then you get part of the profits.
Right.
But he was being paid that right.
And that's
into
based on the
67.
contract too, because sometimes
Right.
either get paid.
Well, he was such a prestigious actor at the time, and they all were waiting for him to come back. Then he was supposed to be in a movie with Elia Kazan again, but it fell apart because he just didn't. It was a whole story. So he was unemployed, but then he made that. And he made a fortune off of that. But that movie was extemporaneous. Bertolucci didn't speak English, and they couldn't write English, so that's Brando improvising. And those are stories of his life, although he would deny it. Have you ever seen it?
No.
When he goes in, his wife's committed suicide, and he goes into the funeral bar and he just starts yelling at her. It was unbelievable. And it was a huge shock, because I was only 13. And I remember my mother went to the drive-in with my sister to see it. My aunt, these very proper Irish. Oh my God! My sister, they're trying to turn off the dialogue because they're F-ball. You never heard stuff like that. And here's
So it is that kind of cursing.
and here's Brando. It hadn't been done. This great actor, he's running around naked.
So he was the first to do it.
Yeah, really. And they cut out some of the stuff, like full frontal and all that, which he said was good because when the camera turned on for his nude scene, he said he had, remember George and the shrinkage? He said, yeah, it went to the size of a peanut. It was humiliating. And there's supposedly this great scene where a Bible salesman's knocking on the door of the apartment where he's having this tryst, and he gets down on all fours and barks at him. But they took that out. But now you flash forward, Coppola, 76, he's making Apocalypse Now. Everybody turned that down. He wanted Gene Hackman, who was a great actor, great character actor. Steve McQueen wanted too much money. Nobody wanted to go to the Philippines to be in this movie. But he wanted Brando, because you know what? Because they just put the camera on him and let him improvise. And so all those things are dialogues. Except Brando showed up. He's being paid $1.5 million a week, which was like unprecedented. And he hadn't read the script or the novel. And what is it? Somebody said Robert Duvall, who's a great actor, had been with Brando in many movies, The Godfather, and he'd been in the movie called The Chase. He says, Marlon's just here. He wants to get paid an extra $1 million for every week we go the overtime. But he was a unique actor, and then he just basically retired again. When we waited for that movie for 3 years, and then all of a sudden you see Brando, he's fat as a Buddha.
Yeah, it must have been weird to see,
He'd been a sex symbol, but of course he's in his 40s but still. And, but see, a lot of great actors, character actors, they become caricatures of themselves in their 40s. George C. Scott was a great character actor. Rod Steiger in that. But,
yeah, there was plenty in that.
But you see the thing about De Niro, he's playing. Do you notice there's a big mistake in his characterization of the young Brando, because Brando gets shot. Don Corleone gets shot in the throat. So Brando lowers his voice to husky. He's only in the movie for like 22 minutes.
Right.
So De Niro starts out with a husky voice, but he's basing it on Don after he's getting shot. But I can only think when Brando came on the screen in 51, nobody'd seen anything like him. And he just created a whole type of acting. And when I was a kid, seeing De Niro, Taxi Driver, I saw in a theater when I was 16. My God, it was like looking at an actual human being, Travis Bickle. And I really hated him for a long time. Then when he was in the Raging Bull, it was like somebody out of the slums right here in Manchester. I mean, I'd actually seen this person. It's like somebody, it was so raw.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that I realized what a great actor he was, because then he played different characterizations. But when he first came up, these Mean Streets, Scorsese's first great hit. Have you ever seen that? He plays Johnny Boy, an insane mafioso would-be.
There's a lot of older movies that I haven't seen. I mean, I've heard of them, but like, I never actually.
You got to watch the old movies. Yeah, because they were going to. They considered him as Sonny. But Khan was already an established name, and he was just too hot an actor. Mm-hmm. And but he was a great actor, but so I agree with you about De Niro. It took a long time, right? The only thing is his voice is a little inexpressive.
But I even liked him, the movie A Bronx Tale.
Oh, yeah.
And Chaz Palminteri, I love as well. But, even De Niro in that, my mom, the way he, portrayed, the bus driver and stuff. My mom
He
is like,
directed
that's very, yes, because it was Chaz Palminteri's
screenplay.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, Chaz Palminteri, he was Cologito. That was, him growing up.
Yeah.
But he wanted to play the mobster part because that is how he could remember it.
Oh, yeah, and he's also... Those are roles he's set for.
Right.
Because, then
he was perfect for that, I thought.
He's a heavy. Certain people can be great actors, but because of your look or something, you're going to be typecast in a certain way. And a great director, Robert Altman, who loved to improvise, almost all his films are improvisational. He had his little company set. The best thing is to have a screenplay where everybody's a stereotype. And it's all stock situations because everybody knows what to expect. Because he came up shooting TV, like Bonanza and Gunsmoke, all this stuff. So nobody has to think about. Because he made a great movie with probably other than Bonnie and Clyde, Beatty's best role, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. You've got to see it.
I thought you were going to say Dick Tracy.
I actually like Dick Tracy.
Because at that time when it came out, I don't know, it was 8 or 9. It was one of the popular things. I went to the movies to see it. My cousin and I, we were big into the Dick Tracy.
I grew up, it was in the comics. Richard Seilbert was a great art director. And that's almost like a triumph of art direction and all practical effects, it's a tiny little train and they use all the different angles and stuff. But you should see McCabe and Mrs. Miller. It's this great western from 1971 by Altman, but it's a very unusual one because Robert Altman, who made the MASH, the original movie, which is a great movie, and Julie Christie, my favorite actress. I think I already said it. Al Pacino said she was the most poetic of all actresses. She hated acting. So she's in very few movies. But she hated being a star. Brando hated it,
That's
too.
the thing, when people become big, whether they were expecting that or not, it's kind of the price of fame.
Yeah, but it's hideous. I had a friend who was an actress in Canada, and she was doing very well. She became a director. She hated it, but she had been acting since she was a kid. And she said, I can understand, she didn't say this to me, she told me other things. I can understand people wanting to be rich, but famous. It's hideous because people follow you. Mm-hmm. They think they know you. One funny thing is if you're with a famous person, though, and you go into a restaurant or something like Los Angeles, everything's generally for free. But then they think you're famous, too.
Right.
They're wondering who you are.
You're just riding, you're riding the coattails.
There, But they think you're famous too. I don't know why that is, but I've seen that phenomenon, and I've had didn't I see you? And this is no, I'm a writer. I've never been in that. But you give up so much of your privacy, and it can drive you nuts.
It's almost kind of ironic because you're so much out there. You're doing interviews or your public eye, but then it makes you more of a recluse, like hermit, because then you don't want to be around so many people all the time. It's almost like you have to. I mean, you don't have to, but you find you're giving up a lot of yourself with that.
Because there's different ratings of actors. The top box office star thing died. That was the Quigley poll. But there's also, and there's in TV.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to get A-list actors anymore because
Yeah.
there's just so much now. It's just so broad. With so many channels and so many.
Everything's changed.
It has.
There were Q ratings. Like John Cusack was always, never became a star, but he was very liked. But then there's also a rating of producers and stuff. If you're going to go out there and sell a movie. Like if you're going to have Jack Nicholson, well, you've got to put up with the fact he's not going to go out and do any publicity.
Yeah.
And De Niro hated doing that too. To get him to do publicity was hideous. But he wasn't a big star until he started making the comedies. Like after it's almost like his serious acting career was given up for a while because he had other interests. And
like Meet the Fockers or something like that.
Yeah, which was funny, but you never thought Robert De Niro would be in a comedy.
Well, it would just be like, the transitions, like Tom Hanks, where you went from a comedic actor to now he's like a great dramatic.
Yeah, I always liked him as a comedian, and for years it's like, I wish he'd make a comedy. Then he made a remake of The Lady Killers, and it wasn't very good. So let's go back to the drama. Now, I once did this thing about, I rated every actor. I was writing a book called Hollywood Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And the absolute middle of it was Hoffman. Because Dustin Hoffman was not only a great actor, but he also was very big box office.
He's very dry. It's
he
not
could
that
do
he's
comedy and drama. But he was so picky. He'd be in very few films.
One of the films I liked that he was in was the movie The Sphere. And that was
that's one of his latter ones. When he's...
Not Susan's.
He made that
blonde.
for money. I know who you mean.
Why can't I think of her name? You're good at remembering all these names. I'm like... It's probably the technology that helped me... but I'll be like, what's that name? And who's... Sharon Stone.
Oh, yeah, Sharon. See, he never had a hit after 1988, Rain Man.
And sick, right?
Which was huge.
With
for 20 years, he was a big star. He could open a movie. But things are different now.
Well, it's like Tom Cruise. I don't like him as an actor at all. But he always gets these blockbuster kind of... but
he was a star on the quality of... The greatest stars were... John Wayne, and then Clint Eastwood, then Gary Cooper. They were just so popular. And he's one of the... And Paul Newman was like that. Paul Newman was 15 or 16 years in the top 10 box office. And only Cooper and Eastwood and John Wayne surpassed that. But there was... I don't even want to mention his name because I used to have a girlfriend that wanted to go see his movies. Tom, what's it? His real name's like Mapother or something. Yeah, he was of that caliber. He was just number one. People would go see him.
Yeah.
But everything's different now in movies.
Like Tom Cruise, I never felt changed in any of the movies. It's Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise.
But see, that's a star.
Yeah, but
De Niro, you'd go see different people. Hey, let's show. Let's show. We keep talking. We didn't talk about you. Can we see the short movie? Brendan, are you still there?
I've been the whole time.
Okay, either the 720 or the 540 version, whatever you think's best. This is the home.
Oh, the home. This is the
So you want to say a little bit about the film? We don't have much time because I talked us blue.
So with that one, my husband's away in prison.
Yeah.
And that's the first time my son gets to meet him because I was pregnant with him before he went to
so
prison. So that it's like
yeah.
that little awkward moment where like I'm kind of stressed out, like okay.
That's why in the photo it's just the baby's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be pregnant there, and we actually took a picture of that at the gym. Like she gave me a bike helmet, and we had to go into the bathroom and kind of wrap it with a long sleeve shirt so it looked real, rather than just looking like this little helmet. And then she was like, "Well, over here by the gym, there was just some balloons for something else, so we just made it like it was like my shower or something that I was having."
Hey, improvise.
Yeah.
Now you're up for a role, aren't you? Down in New York.
Yeah. So
and you are going to be in this movie.
as far as I've been told, I just don't know if I'm going to be the lead or have a supporting role, but I won't find out till after October 19th.
Does it depend on the leading man on that?
I think it's because I was already able to submit, because they have the callbacks, and
Yeah.
I was able to do it with a self-audition tape because I'm further away. They allow me to do that. And he just really loved my acting in it. So he said either way, he wanted me in the film. So we'd be filming starting in January, probably be a month or two, and be paid and do your, you get your lodging and transportation. But so it'd be really cool for me because it would be my first full-length
Yeah,
feature
then
film.
you start moving your way towards the Screen Actors Guild. And
That's the
card.
goal. The goal, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of independent productions, though, have the waiver and that.
Right.
And
And,
very
you just
low
never
budget.
know what the...
Well, if you want to make horror films, I can hook you up with Edward DeYoung Jr.,
Well,
who's been on our show, but
I
we
was
were
talking with a
boycotting
friend.
him
They
right
said
now.
I would probably be good with the horror films because I'm very much like with the eyes, and I could do crazy contorting my body in certain ways and kind of
Well,
stuff.
I was saying that, in the short film, The Homecoming, you have very expressive face. And then when I saw De Niro, that was his great gift, that expressive face.
Right.
So I got to get you back because then we got to get some clips of, I had stuff with Brando talking and De Niro, we have from Casino and stuff like that. But who are your favorite female actresses? I mean, female actors.
Yeah,
You're an
growing
actor
up,
now.
I liked
Well, you got
Winona
about a minute
Ryder.
or so.
Yeah, Winona Ryder.
I love Winona.
Angelina Jolie, Susan Sarandon.
Oh, she's great.
I don't know. I'm trying to think offhand when Gina Davis, because I loved her in A League of Their Own.
You've got to, though, watch some of the old films, because as George C. Scott said, he learned acting from Betty Davis, who's one of the
Got
great
Betty
actors.
Davis eyes.
Well, he learned how to emote, and the camera either loves you or it doesn't, and I
Right.
think it has a love affair with you.
Oh, good.
So that's good. And if
That's a plus.
And it has a love affair with you. You can even be like 5 feet tall, like Tom Cruise, because they have these they call it the grips box. So it's like an apple crate, and you get up on it. And there's all sorts of tricks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
See, I wanted to be an actor, but I was only 5'4". Little did I know in the future there'd be a call for hobbits.
See, you could still go out for it.
I guess. What you have a minute to address the audience in any way you'd like.
Oh well.
Is there a website people can come see you on?
On Backstage, I have it all on my Facebook. So on my Facebook, I have under still Priscilla Mills, and then you can follow me on Instagram either under Priscilla Mills or Veronet March. You could pull it up.
Say
either
your
way.
name again.
Veronet March. That's my stage name. I'm trying to push that one more than my regular name because that's all my credits and everything is under Veronet, and I just got another IMDb credit for the Haven Project.
Do you have your bio?
I have to update.
Hey,
I have to update a payment, otherwise it was up there.
Oh, I can do it. I'm the big bio guy. Well, thank you very much. I hope to have you back, and next time you'll get a chance to talk.
Yeah.
I bet everybody my audience says, don't bet on it. Too much Celtic blood. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow. I think Ryan Gorman's coming to visit us next week. Take care. Bye.